Hello and welcome to another edition of the 10-buck test bench, where we sit down and try to fix an old antique radio using nothing but mostly period test equipment and stuff that cost me, for the most part, around $10, $10 or $15 each. In fact, that oscilloscope right there was exactly $10 at the flea market, and the only thing I had to do was clean the range switches. Easy for me to say. The VTVM, the Heathkit VTVM right there is, oh gosh, what did I pay for that? I think I might have paid $12 or $15 for that. The capacitor tester, I think it was $15. The signal generator was 10 bucks. That was capacitor tester analyzer, I think was, I don't know, $10 or $15. It's been a lot of years. The Heathkit isolation transformer here was a lot more. That was fairly expensive. They get a pretty fair price for those. That AC power supply, or excuse me, DC power supply, the Heathkit, that was free. The signal tracer up there, I think, was 10 bucks. And so on. So it can be done on a budget, and it's something very satisfying. It's very satisfying to work in these old sets using this period correct equipment. Now, in the video just previous to this, I did show a picture of this guy, and I've talked about him a couple of times. And I mentioned that I had another version of it right here, and tonight I'm going to see if I can resurrect that. I just pulled it out of the cabinet, and there was a baggie inside that had the original pilot lamp, which had been, somebody's put this one in here. That is the wrong mount. It doesn't clip onto the little tab here. I think the reason they did that is one of these wires, the insulation is completely missing, and it's down inside. This is isolated. This tab is isolated from the chassis. I think I can go inside, desolder the button that the red wire is connected to, remove that, and I should be able to push the spring and the little insulator out, and I think I can put a new wire in here. I think I can save this and put it back on the set. This set has the knobs, but it doesn't have a back. This is the back from the other set that I already restored. Now somewhere, I swear I did a video on this before I left, or at least I videoed a repair on that, full restoration on this set. I can't find the files. It's not on my computer, it hasn't been published, it's not on any of my camera memory cards. I have no idea where that video footage went. It is gone. I spent better than half the day today going through all my computers and all my files. Couldn't find it. So we're going to do this one. We'll repair this one. This is a Stromberg Carlson model 1101, and this is the 12 series. The one that's over here, the Stromberg, is an 1101 13E series, and I have schematics for the Stromberg Carlson 10 and 11 series, but there's virtually no difference between any of these. Those are just running production changes. The only real obvious thing that jumps out at me right away is the top of this one is removable easily. It was held on with 8 machine screws, which made it easy to clean the cabinet up. I was able to just take the 8 screws out, take everything apart, and clean it up. This one, however, is a slightly different construction. This one has these little speed nuts on it. There's only 6 of them, and those things are a bear to remove. They're a real chore to get off without damaging something. And especially since I believe these are probably, I don't know, I guess those are metal tabs. I guess there's metal posts there. Maybe I'll take a chance on pulling those off so I can polish this cabinet up. And this handle's a little different. This one's open all the way through the back here, where that one just has a little finger hole in the middle. From the top, you can't tell the difference. It isn't until you look from the back you realize this one's completely open on the 12 series, and on the 13E there's just a small hole to get your fingers in. So that's one difference I found so far. We're going to recreate this. I covered that in the last video, and now I'm kind of torn. This has been machined out, and this is actually a flat wire that's recessed into a groove on this antenna. I think I could burn a groove in the other cover all the way around, but laying a wire in there and getting it to look neat is going to be virtually impossible. That's going to be inside the radio when it's done. So I think I'll just wind a normal coil so that it at least has a back and an antenna. I pulled this thing out, and like I said, there was a baggie inside, and when I first got the set and looked underneath, 2 of the screws were missing. There were only 2 screws holding it. But in the baggie, I found, whoop, now I have 3. I found the 4 screws, or the other 2 screws, so I do have the 4 screws to hold it in the cabinet. These are the originals. I'll probably run them through a tumbler or something and take the rust off of them, spray them with a little clear. One of the antenna connectors was missing off the back of the set, but it was in the bag, as was the original lamp that was in the little baggie that was in there. This is to make something. These screws here, I have no idea, absolutely no idea what they're for. They don't go to this set. There's nothing on here that's missing its screws. These look similar to the screws back there. Let's see if they're the same thread. These might be from another. Yes, they are. Look at that. I'll bet he had more than one model 1101. He may have had one with the top like this and got the screws mixed in here. Okay, so that probably answers that. He probably is missing, the guy that sold it to him is probably missing screws for his other one. I will throw these in my screw bin and make use of them on some future set. And we're going to have to cast a pair of knobs for that radio. But we'll do that at a later period. Now when I got this out and flipped it over, and that's as far as I've got with this, I took it out, flipped it over, and took a look. Somebody has repaired the speaker. They did a decent job. The voice coil's not rubbing, so that's good. We're going to have to remake this dial. There's our Series 12 model 1101. Oh, and fortunately the spring for the dial cord was here. That was nice to find. In fact, let me clip this old piece of string off of here, because we're going to be replacing that in its entirety. Won't try to save that string. We'll just get rid of that. So we have the spring for the dial cord. Somebody's put one of these repair plugs on here. These are the ones you squeeze the prongs together and they pull out. These were very common back in the day, and then the 2 legs spread open and the wire just pulls out of there. And when you put the wire in, I'm going to replace this because it's dry and getting cracked. We'll put a new plug on here. But the way these work, they were a clever little setup. You just push the wire into the plug until it's bottomed out, and there's a little spear on each one of these. Nope, that didn't go all the way in. Let's get it all the way in there. Come on. There we go. It went in that time. Those little spears go through the insulation, make contact with the wire, and then you just slip the cover back down over it. Now it's being difficult. There we go. Push it back together, and there you have it. There's your plug back in operation. Where were we? Oh yes, the rats had a field day with this filter cap, but that's no big deal. That's just a hole filler at this point. Somebody's been in here already. That's a replacement volume control. I have a pointer here. It would be more apropos to use than my fat finger. This ought to stand out. It's got new filter caps in it. I'm assuming they're fine. They're fairly recent vintage. All the paper caps have been replaced with poly caps. He's just got the negative for the capacitors, or this capacitor, and yeah, this one and this one. Looks like he's put a tag strip in here, and this one using the speaker, one of the speaker nuts, he's just wrapped the wire on that and tightened it down. So we'll clean that up, fix that. The other set that I have, I put a tag strip in there and mounted both capacitors on it, and it was a much neater, easier to deal with. But other than that, not bad workmanship. Don't know if this works. The chassis has had a rough life at some point. This is caved in, and the metal holding the tuning knob here is all bent and distorted. But that's not the end of the world. We can straighten that out. We can fix that. What's important, the dial glass is intact, the speaker's intact, all the tubes are here, the cabinet's not cracked and in reasonably good shape. So I think this will be a easy one to restore. Now I can see, just you probably can't see it in the camera, but looking at that shaft isn't straight. It's over at an angle like that, well, because of this bend here. And it looks like they tried to bend this to compensate for that, where you should have just straightened this out. But we'll get that corrected. It will be easy to deal with. Not in bad shape, fairly clean, except for some rust here and some rust on the back of the dial assembly. The pointer, oh, I was going to say the pointer's here and intact, but it appears to be rusted in place. Yeah, that won't even move. I don't want to break that. Mess with it later. Mess with it later. Let's see if the set works. But yeah, that's rusted solid. It can't slide. So at some point in time, this got a little bit of water in it, but it only appears to have affected this, the back of that, and this little bracket here. It's not in real bad shape. This set ought to clean up nicely. But let's first of all see if the filter caps are good, if they're wired in right, well, if they're not shorted at least. And we'll take it from there. I'm going to power up my little filter capacitor tester up here, and we'll take a look at the filter caps, see how they're doing. So bear with me just a second. Our power supply up there is set at 125 volts DC, because my little tester here just has a 125 volt lamp in it as a test element. Right now we're on discharge, so there's no voltage on these leads. When I flip this up, we'll be hitting that capacitor with 120 volts DC, and we should see the light go bright and then dim as that cap charges, if it's any good. There it goes. And then now that it's charging, I'll put it in the center position and discharge, and that discharge. So it shows that capacitor was holding current. The fact that when I do that, the light goes out means there's no shorts and the capacitor is viable. So it's safe to give that one voltage. So our test, we're in the discharge, so the test leads are cold. We'll go over here. Okay, this one also goes to ground, and the positive lead is there. And we'll do that same test on this capacitor. That one charged, and it held a good charge. I go test, and then I go to an intermediate position and let it rest, and you see the light blink again. That means it's holding a charge. So if there's any leakage, it's very, very small, because it holds, at least for that period of a couple of seconds, it's holding a charge and enough current left to light the light. So it looks like we're safe to put power to this. I'm going to move this off the bench, shut that power off, and then we'll hook up to the dim bulb. Okay, we have our isolated supply plugged in. We have our little box here set to dim bulb, and there's radios plugged into that. Everything's on an isolation transformer. So I'll flip on the isolation transformer. Power is on the switch here, and I'm going to start turning the voltage up. There's 30 volts and about 25 milliamperes. There's 60 volts. This comes alive about 50 or 60 volts. And through the dim bulb we're seeing 54. There's 60 on that meter, 55 here. 120 milliamperes. Dim bulb is out. I'm not seeing anything on this dial lamp, but it doesn't mean that it's any good. Yeah, I can't tell by looking at it. But it's not lighting up. A little bit. Oh, I'm getting a hum. I can see the rectifier dimly lit. I'm worried. That's not good. I shouldn't be getting that much hum. Those filter capacitors are fine. Let's go up with the voltage. There's 90 volts, and we're getting an awful lot of hum and nothing else. I'm wiggling a tube here. Alright, we got something wrong. We should not have that much hum. So my guess is something's wired wrong. I'm going to kill the AC. It's obvious that something's not right. Let's get a schematic over here and see where we're at. I figured this would turn on and run when I saw all the work underneath here. I figured he'd given up on the cosmetics and the light mounting and stuff like that. I hope the 3D printer running in the background is the little fan noise isn't making too much noise. The camera tends to pick up stuff that doesn't sound very loud to me. Okay, here's the biggest one. Alright, we're going to come in. Let's see where his dial light's wired in first of all. Where's the other lead? There it is. Okay, so we're on pins 2 and 3 have the dial light. And that's the heaters. I believe that's correct for the heaters, pin 2 and 3. Let me get a tube manual over here. It's been so long since I've done this. Oh, over here. Right over here. Within reach. That's a 35Z5. 35A5. 35Z5. Heater. Heater, yeah, 2 and 3 should be for the light, and that's correct, 2 and 3. Why is there another resistor on 3? Okay, yep, that's correct, it's bridged to the plate, to the anode with a 15 ohm resistor, and that's a brown, green, looks like brown, green, black, that's 15 ohms. So the anode is pin 5. That resistor should go to pin 5. 2, 3, 4. Yes, it does. So that's all right. Dial lamp's wired incorrectly. It wasn't lit. Tell you what, let's just take a quick look and see if it's any good. And again, we're going to use our $10 test equipment here because it's just fun to use. this on ohms. Put this on AC ohms. Boom, wow. Why did that come up so slow? Oh, it's been off, just warmed up. I thought I'd turn that on earlier. Okay, so the ohms went up. The lamp's good. Yeah, the lamp is okay. Is it the right current? I don't know. 57 is going to be close enough. It should light up. Okay, we come out of the cathode is on pin 8. We should come out of pin 8. We should go over. Let me follow this here. We should go to this has a choke and an output transformer. Oh no, that's not a choke. I'm being stupid. This looked like a separate choke. Been a while since I was inside this other set. This is obviously the field coil. We have a humbucking coil, the voice coil, and the output transformer. So we should, yeah, let's follow that out. Goes to here. The cathode should go directly. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. According to this, the cathode should go directly to the field coil. That is not going to the field coil. Am I looking at the right tube? I have to be. Yeah, that's the rectifier. Because the cathode is your positive supply, and we should also have a 40 microfarad capacitor across it. Is there another? Oh, I'm a dumbass. Okay, there it is. I lost it down here. No, I'm a dumbass. There it is. It's going to this capacitor. That capacitor should also have field coil on it. It does. That goes up to the field coil. Okay, the field coil goes up, comes back down, and it should go to the other capacitor, wherever they're hiding it. Goes up to here, common. Okay, yes. Alright, so that's wired correctly. Now the hum was there irregardless of what I did, or regardless of what I did with the volume control. So our volume control is here. Probably ought to get a, it's been so long since I've done this. Let me get a clipboard so you can see where I'm. We've got our rectifier, we have our cathode, which is the positive, comes out. We've got a little bypass capacitor here. Or no, that's not the bypass. That's a 40 microfarad. We got a filter cap here, 40 microfarad filter cap. We go through the field coil, through the primary of the voice coil, to the output tube, the 35L6. That B plus line runs up. I'm looking for the other. Alright, there's the other 40 microfarad cap right here. Comes the B plus comes over, goes right into here. So that's wired correctly, so we know the filter caps are good. We've tested them. That's not making our hum. We have the 35L6 output tube. This anode would be driving this. Now we're getting so much hum in the speaker here. It's got to be coming from this stage, because this is our volume control. It's either this stage or this stage, but we've got our volume control here turned all the way down. So our first audio amp is going to be in here. This is our second audio amp. So our problem's going to be in here somewhere. So let me dig into this, and I'll show you what I think I may have found the majority of the issue here. This is our common negative bus, and this is isolated from chassis ground. This is not a hot chassis per se. This one's isolated from the line. We have a 0.05 and a 270K resistor that takes the B plus to the chassis just to get, noise suppression. But this B plus minus, or B minus line, it should be isolated from the chassis. Here's our 240 microfarad capacitors, and you can see the negative goes to the common here, and it goes to the common here. These two tie points. Well, whoever did this didn't understand that both of these capacitors are at chassis ground. Now, it's been so long since I worked on the other one, over a year and a half, that I didn't remember that detail until I started looking. We have our common negative tie points here on the can, and the can is on a Bakelite insulator. It's very common on these sets. That's why it has a cardboard cylinder on it, because that outside of that can is hot relative to the chassis. So what I've got to do is lift these capacitors from ground and run my common B minus here, and I think that hum will go away. So I'm going to do that. You can see where they've got the negatives right to the chassis, and on this one the negatives right to the chassis. Remember, I said he tied it into the speaker, not here. Not supposed to go there. It's supposed to go to the B minus common bus here. So let me correct that. Just a small aside as I do this. Make sure we're in frame here. And right here. You remember I said that was a choke. And then I corrected myself and said, no, that's the field coil. Well, on this set, it's the field coil. On the last one that I did, this set has a permanent magnet speaker and a choke. So that's where I got the choke from. I had looked in here and saw the choke earlier. So that's one of the upgrades from the Series 12 to the Series 13E. The 13E does away with the electrodynamic speaker, and so the field coil's gone. So they put a choke in here. Makes no difference for the operation of the set, but it does make a little bit of difference. It actually gives me more room to put the filter caps in on this one, because I'm upside down here. There we go. Does that make more sense? So this one, there's no choke in here. This one has the choke. Okay, we have the minuses tied together and tied to the common B minus bus, which is connected to the frame of that old capacitor. So I'll have to put another cardboard sleeve over that to cover up that shock hazard. I'll remove the rat chewed one, and maybe I'll 3D print something. So that should be good. And then I was just poking around, looking around at things, and I figured I'll take a look to see if we've got a 270K from the B minus to ground here, and it's supposed to be shunted by the safety cap of 0.05 microfarad, and I figured I'd see if that was in there because I didn't see one anywhere. And I'm poking around, and from here to B minus, it's measuring 30K over there, close enough to 300K, close enough to 270K. I'm happy with that. But I saw this lead sticking up in the air. Turn this down a little bit. There's a lead just kind of hanging out in space here that I suspected might be where the safety cap was. And then I noticed a wire bridging 6, 7, and 8 on the detector first audio tube. And it appeared to be soldered to 6, jumping over 7, and then soldered to 8. But on closer inspection, it was touching 6 and 7 and touching 8. Now, 7 and 8 are the heaters. I'm surprised we didn't blow the heaters out. And 7 is the anode. So that may well have been our hum as well. Definitely these were wired wrong, but these two leads here are what remains of what was the across the line capacitor. I'm not going to replace that right now. I want to just see if this thing turns on and plays at this point. So let's plug it back in. Get these leads out of here. They're not needed at the moment. Take this thing off of the ohm setting so I don't forget it. The battery goes dead. Up out of the way. Let's see what happens. Turn that down. Plug in dim bulb. Radio's on. Variac's on. Let's see what we got here. I don't want to stick my hand in front of the camera. There's 30. There's about 37 volts. There's 60. It's only going to read about 51 here because we're through the dim bulb. Make sure all the heaters start to light up again. Yes, they are. So the series string is still intact. I'm surprised it didn't blow out one of the tubes. Maybe it wasn't making connection, but it sure looked like it was. There's 90 volts. We'll let it warm up. We're drawing 200 milliamperes, which is reasonable. Let's go up to 115. Get this up. Okay, the tubes have warmed up and they're pulling this voltage down, but nothing bad's happening. So I'm going to go to full power. Let's see what happens. Dial light came on. Nothing, absolutely dead, but at least we're not hearing that horrendous hum anymore. That tube, that's warm. All the heaters have to be intact because all the tubes are lit. But I'm not hearing anything out of this thing. It's probably blown something up. And there's nothing coming out of the audio amp at all. It's probably toast. Oh! All I did is tap the audio output tube, and we got those crackles. I suspect there's more wrong in here. Still nothing out of the audio amp. Whoa, that's not good. That's not good. I imagine we've got a bad tube. And we have those pins shunted together. Who knows what's gone wrong in here. I'm going to run these tubes through the tube tester. Right off the bat, our 35Z5 has got a partially open heater. I believe I should have plenty of those. Probably over here in this rack. 12, 6, 6. No, that's all the way up to 6. Where would I have squirreled those away? 6. Oh, here we go. Here we go. 25, 25, 35, Z3, oh, shit, 35, Z5. I think I've got a couple of them. We'll pull a couple out and give these a test. Alright, you know what as luck as have it, the first one I pulled out of the drawer had the same failure as the one that was in it. Part of the filament is open. These are dual, or center tapped filament, not dual. These are center tapped filament. And the center tap is for the pilot light. Now, something not a lot of people are aware of, and this is fairly important, that you put the correct lamp in there. This is supposed to have a number 47. A number 47 is a 150 milliamp draw lamp. This is a 150 milliamp filament or heater string. The number 57 that was in there is a 250 milliamp. Now, it won't immediately cause any damage, but it puts a lot of stress on the other heaters. And if this goes open, you should replace it right away, because it puts a lot of stress on the section of the heater in here that is bridged in parallel with the lamp. You know, it's not exactly center tapped. It's an offset center tap to provide a 6-volt drop for this lamp when this lamp is drawing 150 milliamps. This lamp in parallel with the part of the filament or part of the heater that's in here joins together and allows this lamp to work in conjunction. You know, it puts the correct current through that part of the heater. Without this lamp in there, that part of the heater in this tube goes under tremendous stress, because this is supposed to be shunting 150 milliamps of current away from it, and eventually the tube will fail, and that's probably what happened here. Is this, you know, the guy replaced the lamp in there, and it was picking up the load that heater had gone open, part of the heater. But anyway, replace it with the correct lamp. Man, my phone's ringing. And if we take a look at the tube data here, you can see the heater between pins 2 and 7 says HH, but this one says HL. This is for the lamp. This is where the lamp goes across the circuit, and it says here between pins 2 and 7 is one amount, and 3 and 7 is for the lamp, 150 milliamps. So it is important. You want to make sure that you have a working correct lamp in there. And again, it's not something, you know, that's going to immediately blow up. It just stresses the rest of the heater string. Okay, I'm going to go back, check the rest of the tubes. Since I've got the tube tester out, I won't bore you with that. You've seen people do that 1,000 times. Okay. The sad news is we lost a 12SQ7 when you saw that dial lamp flare momentarily. So that flare may have been caused by this failing because of the excess of current that's been seen because of the lamp, or it just may have failed. However, when this radio is up and working, I will be installing one of these. This is a negative temperature coefficient, or NTC, resistor. This little guy right here. And this is part number 3171146ND, and I got these from DigiKey. And the way these work, well, what takes out a lot of these tubes, this is 150 milliamp series string. However, when these tube filaments or tube heaters are stone cold, their resistance is extremely low. And when you turn these on, I did a whole video on this. I'll have to see if I can find which one it is and put a link in. But if you go back through my videos, you'll find where I actually took a current inrush reading on these sets. And it's multiple amperes of inrush current for a couple or 3 cycles. You don't see it much in these sets because they usually have metal tubes in here. These 2 tubes are very heavy duty filaments. In this case, I'm replacing one with a glass filament here, but if you are familiar with the series string sets with the 7-pin miniature tubes where they're typically all glass, when you turn it on, one of the tubes typically flares like the sun because it's seeing many amperes of current for a few cycles until the tubes start to heat up, the resistance increases, the current goes down, and then everything equals out. Well, that tube that flares is going to fail. It'll be the one that gives up first. Tubes aren't made anymore. We're running out of them. The only option in the future is going to be replace them with solid state devices like they're doing for the transoceanics these days. This little guy here, when it's stone cold at room temperature, is 60 ohms. And when you turn the set on, the voltage drop will happen across here instead of the weaker tube. Now when you turn the set on, you'll still see a mild flare of your dial lamp, but it won't be anything like it was before you put this guy in there. This guy starts out at 60 ohms. It takes the whack when you turn it on. And as soon as the set starts to warm up and you're drawing current through this, this increases in temperature and it goes down to less than 2 ohms when it's fully warmed up. It's not going to affect the operation of the set at all at less than 2 ohms, and it also, well, the fact that it's one, it's going to help because today with 125 volts in many homes, these were designed for 115. This is going to increase your tube life dramatically. I do this on every series string set that I work on. I put one of these in series with the heater string. This way, this 15-cent part is taking the brunt of the surge current and saving the life of your heater string. I just can't tell you how important it is. They're cheap. You just put them in series, you stick them in, there's room for them somewhere. I mean, they're so tiny. Just be aware they do get pretty warm. Don't want to touch one while they're running, but they don't put out, it's such a small device that it's not going to throw a lot of heat into the cabinet. And it's not like putting a big dropping resistor in. It drops down to 1.2 ohms when it's at temperature, and it will save your set. And every set that I do gets one of these. Again, this is a DigiKey part. It's cheap. And it's going to preserve tubes for the future. They're not making them anymore. Nobody's rebuilding them. Nobody, when they're gone, they're gone. So let's do what we can to preserve them for future generations. For a 15-cent part, I'll get off my bandwagon. People tell me I yak too much. I don't really give a damn, but I don't want to drive people away either. All right. I connected the ohm meter across the lead. I pulled every tube, so every tube is breaking the series string, so everything should be okay at this point. So I'm going to turn this on again. And, oh, I forgot to mention the rectifier appeared to have almost 0 output. So turn this down. We don't want to shock our tubes. We don't have the I'm just going to bring this up at full power slowly without the dim bulb and watch the heaters. Nothing bad happened other than the heater string failing, so I'm not seeing anything on the dim bulb. Oh, we're not on dim bulb. I'm not seeing anything in the heater string yet either, though. Okay, now the heaters are coming up. I'm seeing them. We're at 90 volts. We should get some activity. Okay, we have some activity. We don't have that horrible AC hum. But obviously something else is miswired. Do I have local oscillator? Do I have another radio sitting here? No, I don't. I could use the scope, but I'm going to go old school here. By the way, these three tubes, the RF amp, the oscillator, and the IF, all tested like new tubes. Oh. This has got something wrong with it, but I am going to put the antenna on it. Yeah, I think I'll put the antenna on this and see what happens. Let me get that up from the other set, and obviously something's loose somewhere. I got to be careful, that's live. Ow, hot. Okay, I'm going to clean up the tube sockets and put the antenna on. Here's an old school trick to see if the local oscillator is working. I've showed this before, but not everybody watches all my videos, and there's going to be new viewers out there, of course. I've got one of my favorites among my collection up here. Up at the top, we've got the Chrysler that Dave sent to me, and the triads that I restored, and my favorites are up there, the ones that I'm going to keep, and this was one of them. This Emerson AC/DC portable set, AC/DC battery, and right now it's not plugged in, it's on battery, so it should be instant on. HireMeNH.com is easy to navigate, and we're adding new those tube heaters on those battery tubes are almost instant. Now, this set's on and warmed up. How do I know the local oscillator's working? Well, I'm going to tune off the station here to a quiet place and just swing the dial on this one. Hear that? Blocking. It's blocking the noise. This is receiving the local oscillator with enough signal strength that it's overcoming the local noise. You hear that tick, tick, tick? That's the frequency counter up there on the bench. And we can actually drown it out with this. So that shows the local oscillator is working. In some cases, you can actually drown out a local radio station.
Consumer, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're
there we go.
The key nightmare.
Local oscillator is running well enough that it's actually drowning out the local radio station.
Spending more than you have to.
So if you don't have any test equipment and you don't know if your local oscillator is running, just get out another AM radio and sweep the dial around. Now, let's turn this up. Yep. We obviously still have problems. Oh, no. Oh, it's receiving.
Fox News ahead of a test vote tomorrow on a bipartisan border bill that months ago.
Are they going to put
Okay, now that I know it's working,
or are they going to play politics? If that's
I am going to take a quick, that sounds like it could be bypass capacitor, it sounds like it could be IF tuning.
Look and say it doesn't go far enough.
It's one of the most common things I used to run into when I briefly did this professionally, if you will, when I got out of the service. And I just got sick of dealing with the public and went and looked for something else to do. But the radio wouldn't work, and they would adjust things in here, thinking, oh, it must be an adjustment. And no, that's the last thing you do is go after the adjustments. But this set has had a few things wrong with it, so I think I'll take a quick look at the IF alignment, and then I'll go looking for bypass capacitors, misrouted wiring. We'll do this. As will unshielded tubes. Now, I've put an unshielded detector in there, but usually that doesn't give you problems. If it's an IF amplifier or the oscillator or an RF amp, then usually if you put an unshielded tube in there, you can have issues. But in this case, I don't think that's it. Alright, I'm going to put some stuff away, get some stuff out, and okay, I've done a couple of things off camera here because reviewing my video that I made of my 3D printer, it just brought home how long in the tooth my camera is getting. The light sensitivity is horrible, and when it gets a little bit dim in the room, it just gets so grainy. Plus, you've probably noticed over time the focus jitter. This camera's hit the floor on the tripod. It's been, knocked over 6 to 10 times over the years. But I love this camera, although it's got stereo microphones, but because I sit on one side of it all the time, all you hear is mono out of one channel. But the focus on this, if we can get it to come in, there we go. I'm within an inch of the lens. I can get macro shots, and I didn't do anything but stick my hand in front of it, and then it'll zoom back out down here. And here's an image I took where I used to work across the Manchester airport, and you see the little white dot in the middle of this image. Well, here's what the optical zoom in this camera does. That's the little white dot you see. See the tail of that aircraft? But this camera's getting on 15, maybe 20 years old at this point, and it's just time to replace it. So rather than try to shoot repair work, I did some stuff offline. We cleaned up this guy. It was rusty as sin. We took off the backing piece for the dial. We're going to clean that up. I made a cover for the capacitor to replace the paper one that was all chewed up. That was fun. I printed a little bit too far underside, and when I slid it on, it got about halfway down and jammed, and I couldn't get it off, and I couldn't push it on, and if I had forced it, I would have broken the little bakelite insulator down there. So I quickly looked up the coefficient of expansion between the aluminum can and this guy, and not to get too technical, depending on the alloy, aluminum can be anywhere from, the COE can be anywhere from like 16 to 23. PLA plastic is 68. So I grabbed my heat gun and warmed it up, and it slid right off. And I sanded a little bit on the ID until it'd go on like 3/4 of the way before binding, and then I warmed it up and dropped it on there. So it's on there for eternity at this point. It shrunk up on the aluminum. And that'll prevent anybody from reaching in here and getting belted off the line voltage that's present on that, depending on which way the plug is in. We polished this guy up. That was rusty as sin. Straightened out the shaft here. There was a big divot in the chassis. We got that pushed out. It looks like somebody dropped this thing on this knob at some point, because the knob that was on here had a divot in it. In fact, if I pull that out, this won't be the one I cast. It'll be the other one, but you can see there's a, get in here. Yeah, there's a chunk missing out of this knob. And it actually had driven this part of the chassis in and put a good dent in there, but we worked that out. Right now I'm going to fix this guy and get the correct one on there so that when it goes back together, I'm avoiding working on it again until I've got the better camera. I've got a camera coming tomorrow. It's a, I looked at the newest versions of this Canon, and they're like $600. And the reviews aren't good. Everybody's complaining, you know, the quality has gone downhill. So I'm trying a cheap webcam camera that's got 4K resolution, supposed to have good low light. It's got an external microphone jack, and I have a lavalier mic, wireless, that my neighbor gave me. I'll show you that at a later time. It came from Amazon to them by mistake, and Amazon told them keep it. So they gave it to me because they had no use for it. Alright, remember, this is the one that belongs on the radio. This is not the correct mount for the dial lamp. But the wires, all the insulation was gone, and the guy evidently didn't know how they come apart. Those of us who grew up with cars from the 50s and 60s understand how these light sockets work. You just poke something in the back, long and thin, and the little insulator will pop out, and the spring is behind it. So I'm going to solder a new wire on the spring, solder a new wire on the little button here, and we'll take this guy out and solder this guy in so that when the dial is back on here, it'll slip on the little tang on the dial mount, and we'll have the correct dial lamp in there. Now I can sit here and have you watch me solder this thing, but you know, I think that's not going to be of much value. I just wanted to say that if you want to take one of these apart, the little center insulator will usually push out if you go in the back with something long and thin, and they're repairable. Okay, and there's our repair cameras. Yeah, I guess that's better. Got our little ball here on the end for the center contact. I even put a piece of heat shrink around here just to guarantee it never touched the spring. Now, it can't really because it's captured inside that tube, but you know, never hurts to be safe. Better safe than sorry. And we'll take this assembly now that it's repaired, slip it back inside its little housing here. Come on. There it is. Slip this down inside. Bada boom, bada bing. Put our lamp in there. Didn't go down far enough. Oh, where's something I can poke with? Here we go. There we go. Now it's all the way down. There we are. Completed lamp assembly, ready to be reinstalled in our radio. Just to reassure everybody, all is well. No short circuits. Lamp goes in and out. Perfect. While I was in there, I went ahead and put the NTC in here. That's the negative temperature coefficient resistor for the surge protection. And the reason I put it here is this is the rectifier, the 35Z5, and there's always a couple of extra pins on these sockets, well, at least on sets that are post-war, During the war, a lot of times, or immediately after, it was a metal shortage, so they didn't put any unnecessary sockets in the tube socket arrangement. But most of them, 99% of them, you'll find they have all of the little pin sockets in here. The tube doesn't even use all of them, so you're safe to use the empty ones. You see, we don't even have pins on those two in the tube. That's the way they come. So you're safe to go ahead and use the empty pin as a tie point. I put my line cord down there, ran my NTC over here to where the line cord would normally go. I'm finding like a series capacitor resistor combination that's not on the schematic, and this combination here, this 5 picofarad with a 1 megohm that's going from the plate of that tube to the plate of this tube, is not on the schematic. And I'm wondering if that, it sounds more like an audio feedback problem. So what I'm going to do, just for a sanity check, is I'm going to drag the other chassis over here and compare it, because that other set works beautifully. And there's always running changes. This is a series 12, and the other one's a series 13E. So there's always going to be wiring changes, slight differences. The schematics typically on sets like this are only going to get you just so close. You've got to be careful. That's why I go one capacitor at a time when I change them. A lot of guys like to just go in and take them all out and change them without, I like to do one at a time, verify against the schematic as I'm doing it, and make sure that when it goes back together, if there's an issue, it's because I put something in the wrong place. But I did mention earlier I was going to do an IF alignment. I took a quick look at it. It was out. Not enough to make me think he or whoever worked on this did it. Just rearranging the wires coming out of the IF transformers, you're changing capacitance on the leads, and that'll affect alignment. I've seen schematics that say do not change the dress of the wires, make sure a certain wire goes in a certain place. Usually that's more on shortwave sets where the frequencies are higher, but you have to keep in mind wire dress can make a difference. Okay, let's get that other chassis over here and see what's up. Oh, well, this has been a journey. I couldn't let this go, even though I said I wasn't going to film anymore or video anymore until I got another camera. It's just driving me nuts. Two things bothered me. One, when I changed the volume, it changed the feedback. So I said, this isn't an RF thing. This is somewhere in the audio chain. Or it's bypass, something we're affecting the bypass with the audio chain. Now this does tie to the AGC line, but I checked the AGC line. What I've been doing is taking the schematic and coloring every line, and I've been tracing everything out, and I'm looking for wiring issues because we found a couple early on. Turns out these are running changes. What I thought may have been a mistake, that one and this one, they're running changes because the other unit has the same configuration. I've got the correct schematics on the way. I've got the schematics for this series. It's an 1101, but this series 12 and 13 I have on the way. Another thing that bothered me is when I put this capacitor to the chassis ground from the B- line, which is supposed to be in there, it made the problem worse. And I said, what's going on here? This is making me crazy. And I went back and looked at everything again, and then I looked at these capacitors and realized this is 474. That's 0.47 or 0.5 basically, 0.5 microfarad, 0.47 microfarad. All of these capacitors are supposed to be 0.05, which would be 403 or 0.05. or excuse me, 0.503 rather, instead of 474. 503 is 0.05 capacitance. So we've got 1, 2, 3 capacitors in there that are, what's that, 10 times the value they're supposed to be. So we're going to get those changed out, and I bet my oscillation feedback problems go away. I'm not going to bore you with all the soldering. You see people do that all the time. This video is probably already over time. But I'm going to take care of this. This is what I found. It just took dogged determination to keep looking at it and looking at it. So the guy made a mistake on his capacitors, put the wrong ones in there, as well as not having these grounded. And what else? There was one other minor wiring issue that was, I don't even remember what it was now. But we'll get that squared away and see what happens. Okay, we have the wrong capacitor here, but it also isn't even soldered in. Missed the solder joint. Happens to the best of us. I can't fault him for that, but that's why when I tapped the chassis I was getting a lot of static, like something was loose. I thought it was a tube socket. It was that connection right there. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3 capacitors changed out. I checked these. This one's alright, this one's alright. Then I looked at this one. This is the bypass cap for the screen grid on the IF amplifier tube. That's 10 times the value it's supposed to be as well. That's a 104. It's supposed to be a 103. 0.01. Right now it's a 0.1. So we'll get that one changed out as well. See what happens. Whew. Okay. Let's see what we've got. I cleaned that bench off. I had junk all over the place. I couldn't stand it anymore. Oh, I didn't put that away. Get it later. That's on. Turned up. I'm going to turn the variac down. I've done a lot of soldering and snipping wires in there. We'll start slow. Just to make sure there's no disasters. Keep an eye on the tube heaters and the dial lamp. Wow. Why is that so discolored so fast? Cheap bulb, I guess. It was a brand new bulb when I put it in there, and it's the right one. But, now the heater, the filament's right up against the glass in it, no wonder. It said GE, but I'll bet they're made in China. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. Okay, all the heaters look good. 150 milliamps. It'll go up when the tubes start to conduct, but that's the filament string, 150. And start pulling. We still got feedback. So something else is wrong. And it's still tied to volume. Good grief, this set's got problems. Yep, that's burned out. I'm going to replace it right now. Hooey. I thought for sure we had a wiener this time. That's bizarre. Alright, I'm going to change that bulb and start looking again. Now, we still got the squeals and the pops and the howls, as you heard. I just at a lot. No, this sounds to me. You know, here's the thing. The volume control still affects it. It sounds more and more and more like an EVC problem, automatic volume control, or AGC, depending on where you come from. We have a replacement pot here, and so many other things have been wrong. I'm going to take a look at that. This is supposed to be 1 megohm. And this is directly in the AVC line. This is our AVC line. Are we in frame? Yeah. Our AVC line goes through the antenna, hence the reason I connected it back up, because it goes to the grid of the 12SK7. This is part of our AVC circuit. Very common in these sets that the AVC voltage goes through the loop. Comes back here. Okay, we go up. Do we have a path? Yes, we do. Path into this grid, so we're controlling this grid and this grid with AVC. Probably this one as well, if I follow it. Comes up through here, yeah, into the grid. So our AVC is controlling all three of these tubes. But this pot here is part, you know, goes to B minus. It's part of the AVC circuit. Let's see if he substituted a wrong pot in there and it's throwing my AVC circuit out. I'm clutching at straws at this point. But, okay, we're on ohms. We're on R times 1 meg. So we should have 1 meg in here. It should go to 1. Or close to it. Where does this wire go? On here. That didn't look promising. Not at all. If that's on R times 1 meg, and it's supposed to be a 1 meg pot, I got a good connection here. Oh, am I on ohms or DC? No, I'm on ohms. Try this again. Maybe I didn't have a bad. Okay, that looks like 500K. I wonder if he's got a 500K pot in there. Let's go here to next scale. Should go to 10. No, it goes to 6, 5.5. I bet that's a 500 meg pot. It's probably shunting my AVC to ground. Shoot, have I got a 1 meg with a switch? I don't know. Let me go dig through the stuff. And you probably couldn't see the meter. I just realized the meter wasn't in your frame. There's infinity. There's 0 ohms. If I go on here, that's 550K. Now there is another path through here that may be affecting it, but I've got a sneaking suspicion this is the wrong pot. What other path have I got? There's no resistor there. There's a 10 meg there. Yeah, I think we got the wrong pot. Now there's a couple of resistors that would throw this off a little bit, but not by 500,000 ohms. I think that's a half meg pot in there, which is a common value. I can't see any markings on it. I'll have to lift I'll lift this lead down here to verify it. Alright, I've removed the wire from that other end of the pot. Let's see what we've got with only it in the ohmmeter circuit. Yep, 500 meg pot. That's got to be changed out because it's going to affect the AVC circuit. Is that my problem? I don't know for 100%, but it's certainly a smoking gun at this point. Okay, off to find my junk box. Alright, here's what we got. We got a jar here full of 1 meg pots. There's several in here. The switches have already been robbed off of, but they don't have the right shaft anyway. I could make any one of these shafts work. This one I know is audio taper. I don't know about these two. This had a switch on it at one time. It's been taken. That's probably audio taper. I don't know about this one. This could be a TV control. This is definitely audio taper, but it's the wrong shaft. But maybe I can graft a switch on. This one has the right diameter shaft. It's a 1 meg. It'll be an audio taper, and the switch is on there. So if I can change out the shaft for one of these, or this one, there's a 1 meg. This is an audio taper. Yeah, it's got about the same length boss on it. I might be able to steal the shaft, or the the shaft, because this is no good. This is too short. I could modify this to work. So there's my possibilities, I guess. Before I do that, I'm going to jump on the interwebs. It's getting harder and harder and harder to find this stuff with the right shaft. You used to be able to buy kits. In fact, when I was a pup, I could jump on my bicycle and 15-minute ride downtown Manchester. There was a great big place, I forget the name of it, but they had everything in the world for TV and radio repair, because people were actually doing it back then. And they used to sell kits, and you could buy the switch, you could buy the pot and the shaft piece, and you put together the one you wanted from the parts. Alright, reminiscing's over. Let's see what we can do. Okay, somehow either I forgot to press record, or when I transferred all these files over to the computer, something didn't come over because there's a missing video clip. I went back and grabbed a fresh schematic and started tracing out the AVC line and started checking all the bypass caps. Now you remember way back I checked from the B- bus to ground, and I had this 270K resistor. It was there. I had it on the ohm meter. What I didn't do was verify that this capacitor was there, because I got sidetracked and we got talking about stuff over here on the other end of the schematic, and I got distracted, and in my back of my head I said, I know this is good because I checked this. Well, I checked the resistance to ground. I never checked for this missing capacitor. All of that feedback was because there was no bypassing on the B-. That was just sitting there floating above ground. So I installed a 0.05 microfarad capacitor from the B- bus to ground. All the oscillations disappeared. That was the root of that problem. And as for the potentiometer, what I did was I put a 500K ohm resistor in series with it here, so that the total resistance was 1 meg. The volume control works just fine. I've got plenty of audio volume even with that extra 500K in there. This radio's got plenty of audio. So I'm not even going to bother, or didn't bother, changing that pot. Just added that 500K resistor here, and everything's fine now, and the set's working very well. So on to the video clips that I didn't lose. Okay, this will be the final chapter of the actual radio repair. There'll be 2 or 3 other videos covering the knob replacement, remaking the dial, and winding that ugly looking antenna that's back there in the back. Ugly but functional. This still needs work. It needs a couple turns taken off so that it can be netted in, but we'll cover that in a different video. But everything is working now as it should.
Bring your unsaved family and friends to watch the new movie, The Firing Squad.
And I shouldn't touch this because it affects the tuning. This capacitor is above ground. But
Gold. 800-95 Gold. You'll get the report. They can help you get started like they did with me 20 years ago.
And everything's working as it should.
Your account immediately with $250 to help you get started.
You can see the AVC voltage.
7 Gold now. 800-95.
We go from, that's because I'm touching it. But if we go down here, off station, we've got, what am I on? The 5-volt scale, so we've got about 1.25 volts of minus bias on the tubes. If I come down here where there's a strong station,
For listeners, go to DeBuggingFamily.com
discount to get all the benefits of membership. Plus,
We're at
a
about
chance to
4.5,
buy
minus
one of your
4.5
choice.
volts
Go
of
to
grid bias,
defendfamily.com
damping down the
now.
gain of the tubes. If I touch the antenna, you can see we go right off the scale, Stromberg signal. So the AGC is working beautifully. We'll go up here to a weak station.
Every child deserves the right to grow up in a safe, loving home.
And we've got about 3.75, 3.8 volts of AGC. So everything's working as it should.
Last season, millions tuned into the Betrayal podcast to hear a shocking story of deception. I'm Andrea
This
Gunning.
set is very sensitive to being touched, like some of these are.
Justin Rutherford.
Here's a
Doctor, father, family
the
man. It was the perfect
I'm
cover
imparting
to
a
hide
hum.
behind.
That's because I've got my arm on the metal desk here.
Listen to Betrayal
But
on
in
the
operation, this
#1
is completely
podcast
isolated
network,
with a dial stream, so that doesn't
Open
happen.
iHeart app, search Betrayal and start listening.
Modulation hum, that's the word I'm looking for. What was wrong with this? A multitude. Multitude of things have been wrong with this radio. But the last two items I took care of. We had low AVC. We only have a 500K pot in here instead of a 1 meg. Now what I did is I added a resistor here to temporarily take care of that. It means I don't get quite full volume out of this set, but it's certainly loud enough. I could probably leave this pot in here.
It's hard, especially Valley View, Fox Weathers.
I can drive it hard enough to cause distortion in the audio amp. Probably fine like it is. I put I didn't tell you what I did. I put another 500K resistor in here, so I have a total of 1 meg ohm now across here. It just slightly reduces the upper end of the volume, but I can turn it all the way down and get rid of it, or I can get it up loud enough here
Where a woman was in bed when a tree fell
to
on.
actually cause distortion. So probably don't even need to change that pot. I could just leave that 500K ohm resistor in there. The final solution was this missing capacitor right here. That's what was causing all of the oscillations. And this thing had me going in circles for a while because I bypassed the grid to the cathode on the RF amplifier, and the oscillations were still there, but they changed characteristics, and it was the same every stage I went down. By grounding the grid, I figured I'd find the stage that's oscillating. Well, they were all oscillating and all contributing. And it was when I realized that this capacitor was missing here, which bypasses the B- to the chassis. Because this B- runs all through the radio, it was picking up feedback from every tube in here. And all of these have the cathodes referenced to the B-. But when I bypassed that to the chassis, problem went away. When I realized that was missing, it took a long for the light to dawn over Marblehead that one was missing. So we had we had an incorrect B-, you remember? The filter capacitors, instead of being to the B- were the chassis. The chassis is isolated through a 270,000 ohm resistor, so there was basically no filtering on the B-. We had a bad heater section in the 35Z5, and when we corrected that and had the wrong pilot light, we took out the, what was it, the 12SK7, that's what it was, I think, if I remember right. The detector tube, its filament was weak, and it finished that off. So the casualty list for tubes was these two, and so that's taken care of. We have decent tubes in it. We have all the correct capacitors. Several of the capacitors were 10 times the value they were supposed to be. Instead of being 0.01s like this one, they were 0.1s. Would that have stopped the radio from working? No, but you're going to be driving the grid too hard. You're going to have distortion. So we've taken care of that. Everything is working. We're going to wrap this video up as far as the repair of the radio goes. There'll be several associated, or I guess associated videos. One winding the antenna, another one will be fixing the dial glass, and another one will be casting new knobs. And we've got some surprises for that. I picked up a 3D scanner or camera, whatever you want to call it, so that I can 3D scan these and try printing them as well as casting them. I think they're going to come out better cast, but we're going to try both methods and see what we can come up with. So that's it on this Stromberg Carlson. Remember, even in the lower price field, there is nothing finer than a Stromberg Carlson. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. I'm the radio mechanic. We'll talk to you soon, and thanks for stopping by. Hope this wasn't too long a video. In fact, this will probably end up being split into 2 videos. I'm suspecting it's extremely long. I haven't even looked at what's on the memory card yet. Take care. Stay healthy. See you soon. Bye-bye.